This moment, this decree, there was a great